Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please come to order, we'll get started on House Bill 106. There's a few people still to come in, but if you'll make your way quickly, the chairman's going to start on time. Okay. Chair recognizes the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Chairman England, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you brought your running shoes because we're going to run through this rascal, but it's going to be a prolonged run, so there's a lot to go through. If it were an actual run, I don't believe I'd make it for the first lap in my physical condition. So anyway, if you would just bear with us, we'll walk through it and then see if you got any questions at the end, and we'll be glad to try to answer those. House Bill 106 for the fiscal year 2014 budget. The effective date will be July 1 of 2013, and the revenue estimate is set at $19.8 billion, an increase of about $512 million, or about 2.65% over the amended fiscal year 13 budget. The greatest portion of the growth that will cover will cover needs in education, which is about $268.8 million of the new funds. Of that amount, K-12 education spending will increase by about $236 million. Pre-K will have another $13.5, of which $12.9 is specifically set to fund 10 more days of the school year. Health and Human Service agencies net an additional $197.8 million. In the House version of House Bill 106, the Department of Community Health and its attached agencies will be adjusted by about $174.5 million, behavioral health for about $17.7 million, and public health for about $4.6 million. In addition, there's nearly $10 million in new funding for juvenile justice reform and about $130 million to fund the state's pension obligations. Within House Bill 106, the governor proposed program changes in 3 areas: collapsing rail, transit, airport aid, and ports and waterways into one intermodal program, decentralizing $25 million in the central office expenditures of the Department of Education, and spreading the cost of the programs where the monies are actually spent. This is a recommendation pursuant to the zero-based budgeting analysis that was conducted over the summer. In combining low-income Medicaid with age, blind, and disabled Medicaid for one benefit program called Medicaid. Your subcommittees have agreed with the first 2 changes, but are recommending that the benefits programs in community health remain separate for now. In addition, the FY14 budget also benefited from the debut of tandem ZBB budgeting processes, which is the first official year of this practice. As a result, 57 of the state's programs, including the entire Department of Education, underwent extensive ZBB analysis. The results are that some of the low-performing programs and non-essential positions are being eliminated, and as I previously mentioned, some programs are actually enhanced or further enacted. Major highlights of the House version include $13.4 million for the full restoration of the provider rate cuts in DCH. With the federal matching funds, they will have a total impact of about $40 million. $4.8 million for a 3% rate increase for out-of-home care providers in DHS who provide room, board, and watchful oversight to foster children, many of whom are not able to be placed in traditional foster homes or foster care settings because of extensive therapeutic needs. The recognition of $83.5 million generated through the QBE formula for state health benefit plan, which will mitigate potential premium increases proposed in the coming year. $40.8 million in motor fuel funds for roads and bridges, which includes $15 million in additional funds for LMIG, as well as $7.1 million for construction needs. About $4.3 million for year 2 of our 3-year commitment to provide law enforcement officers in DNR and GBI with salary adjustments to keep our well-trained and talented and most experienced personnel in state service instead of being siphoned off to other agencies. Finally, a word about bonds. The governor has graciously left room for the House and Senate to add about $100 million in principal in bonds, about $50 million per chamber, enable for us to put in our priorities. In addition, he has recognized the need for $21.8 million in equipment needs for construction projects underway that were not included in his original recommendation, and has authorized the funding of those items in the package as well. The final result is that 72% of the bonds in the House version are for education, higher education, and libraries. 20% are for economic development, which includes $62.5 million for water projects and $50 million for the Ports Harbor Deepening Project. And the remaining amount, the largest portion, is $41.5 million for public safety needs. So with that said, we will walk through the tracking sheet document, which is probably the easiest one to follow because it does highlight the differences between our recommendation and the governor's recommendation. Section 1 is Georgia Senate. They will make changes there. We do the changes to our House operating expenses. They do the changes to theirs. So there are no changes in Section 1. Section 2, you'll notice a 3% reduction in our operating expenses. Just as we've asked other state agencies, we felt that if we were going to ask others, we need to do the same ourselves. Offices of the General Assembly, again, 3% reductions. Audits and accounts, you'll see one change there, a reduction in funds for personal services and operating expense. That's a 2% reduction rather than a 3% on that particular item. And what they're going to do is manage through employee turnover and vacancies. That 1% is left for a computer upgrade that they're needing to do there. Court of Appeals, Section 5, line 5.1.6, we have semi-agreed with the governor's position there. However, we felt we needed to just restore 2 of the 4 furlough days for this time. And then 5.17 is eliminating some one-time funds that were put in 13 for some computer purchases. Moving on to Section 6, Judicial Council. 6.1.1, we're moving one accountability court administration position to CJCC. 6.3.1, Chairman Powell felt that they were not ready really to roll out the rest of the e-filing system at this time, so they're going to use current personnel to do what they have in-house. 6.4.1 is a reduction in the travel needs asked for there. And then 6.5.3 is also a reduction of 1%, which is carryover from the amended fiscal year 13 budget. In 6.5.1 and 6.5.2, we took those adds back out. The first one deals with rural judicial circuits. It is still a pilot program, but we're not asking for it to be expanded at this point. The next one deals with probate judges, a council for the probate judges. We're saying not to add that council position at this point in time. Section 7, Council of Juvenile Court Judges. On 7.1.1, just a 1% reduction, again a carryover from the amended 13 budget. Moving into Section 8, Prosecuting Attorneys. Under Council Superior Courts, 8.11, a 1% reduction there. 8.21, they were asking for 25 additional ADAs. The committee is saying to do 12 ADAs right now located in the areas of greatest need, and if they need to, then they can multitask by working in several districts or 1 or 2 districts as needed. 8.2.4, there was an annualization of $271,000 that was not necessary to do, so we've taken that out. 8.2.7 is we've passed House Bill 451 that adds a new judgeship in the Chattahoochee Circuit. We're putting in the money for one new assistant district attorney starting on January 1, and you'll see that come up again in a couple of other places because we're just doing 6-month funding on those as they get ramped up and ready to go. Under Prosecuting Attorneys Council, 8.3.1, we did do a small increase there, but only half of what was asked for. Section 9, Superior Courts. Council of Superior Court Judges did a 1% reduction there, carried forward from the amended budget. 9.2.1 under Judicial Administrative Districts, we've made a reduction there to the projected operating expenses needs there. 9.3.1, it's been the position of the House always provide as best we could for senior judgeships, especially when we've got the accountability courts up and running and other drug courts have been started separately, so we have restored the funding there for the senior judges. 9.3.3, 2 law clerks we didn't agree to go with there, and 9.3.4, there were 30 secretaries. However, no raise had been promised, and we're not doing raises right now for state employees, so we felt it was inappropriate at this time to put that in. 9.3.6 is the Superior Court judgeship for the Chattahoochee Circuit, and you'll see that ad becomes effective January 1 of 2014. Supreme Court Section 10, line 10.1.4. We're doing an ad for a half year for a floating staff attorney, and so what we're saying is that would also start January 1 of 2014. Section 11, State Accounting Office, a slight increase in reduction there. The deputy position, we'll just hold it open for 6 months, so we've taken a small adjustment there. DOAS in Section 12. 12.1.2 is the funding for House Resolution 73, which is a compensation resolution for wrongful imprisonment. I believe that was passed on day 30, so we're providing for it here. State purchasing under 12.6.1, basically what we're doing there is saying it's okay to raise the cap. We raised that cap in the amended budget and just clarifying with language here to do the same. Under the Aviation Authority on 12.11.2, we have taken a reduction there. Through this year, they're only going to project to use about 330 hours, and what we're doing is putting in for 400 flight hours and removing the remainder. Department of Ag on consumer protection, a 13.2.2. We annualized the cut that was put in the amended budget, so that's the reason that cut is a little bit deeper than what it was initially. Same is true for 13.4.2 there. And then if you'll look at 13.4.3, after working with Commissioner Black and his folks over there have been doing a great job with the GATE card, the Georgia Agriculture Tax Exemption cards, many of which you've probably seen a little blurb on the front of the AJC this morning about. He feels like $550,000 instead of $750,000 will adequately allow for them to do those cards in the coming year. Moving on to no changes in banks and banking on 14. Moving on to behavioral health, section 15. We've added some language on 15.2.1, just clarify that that is a one-time cut there. It will not be a recurring cut. On 15.2.4, OPB recognizes the FMAP increase in federal reimbursement there. And so what we've done is also recognized it in 5 other areas on 15.4.8, 15.6.1, 15.7.2, 15.9.3, and 15.10.2. So you'll see those as we continue through their budget. And again, on 15.4.8, you'll see that noted there. 15.6.1, you'll see it noted. On 15.7.1, we're saying that we would like to put $250,000 additional dollars into the Marcus Center for Autism. That will allow them to serve at least 200 additional kids there. Last year they were able to serve about 264 kids with the same amount of money because it does get a 1-to-1 federal match. 15.7.2 is housekeeping with FMAP. 15.9.3 is FMAP again. 15.10.2 is FMAP. 15.10.3 is a language ad, just asking that those rates be looked at. And North Georgia providers are reimbursed at significantly lower amount than what others across the state are. So we're just asking for a comparison to be done and recommendations to be brought back to us next year. Moving on to section 16, DCA. Under 16.2.1, coordinated planning, taking another slight additional cut there, about $3,000 for operating efficiencies. 16.12.1, the governor recommended eliminating the funds for the Georgia Rural Water Association. We're recommending not to eliminate those funds, but to leave some in there. They're able to do some of the water testing for rural communities that can't do the testing on their own. Under 16.4.1, in under 1 Georgia. We're moving 5 of the $15 million that's being put back in there to a new and beginning farmer loan program under the Georgia Development Authority. They're actually going to match that with another $5 million of their own money. Chairman McCall, Chairs Burns, Roberts, Houston, myself, and many others have been working on this program now for 2 or 3 years and trying to kind of model what's being done in Kentucky with some of the tobacco settlement money. However, this is not tobacco settlement dollars because we're using them elsewhere, but we have used tobacco settlement money there in 1 Georgia before, so we're just trying to get that program up and rolling. Section 17, Chairman Parrish made so many cuts and not cuts, but so many changes here. I should make him come up and explain it. Allow me to sit down and get a breath, but we'll dig in and try to as best we can. Basically, in a nutshell, what we've been able to do is go back in and backfill the 0.74% provider cut that had been mentioned earlier. And so by doing that, it's where you see several of the changes happening here. One of the other changes you'll see that's a large change is where age, blind, and disabled and low-income Medicaid was going to be rolled up under one line just to say Medicaid. We're not doing that roll-up this year. However, what we are doing is agreeing to up to a 10% movement of funds between those two in order to balance out from it has been at 2%, and we're just saying we're allowing it to go to a 10% there. You'll see a reduction for 1714, which is a contract for the Navigant report. That is no longer needed. That report has been done and submitted. Some language at 1715, talking about Section 1115 waivers, and just giving DCH permission to ask CMS for a waiver. Under 1722, we're lessening the cut to the Firefighters Burn Foundation there in Augusta, and instead of a 50 cut, it's a 25,000 cut. And then in 1724, putting in 2 more of the federally qualified health centers in Dawson and Chatham County. And one thing I want to mention there, and you'll see it again in another place here in just a minute. Under that, those agencies have agreed, those in the rural care health centers have also agreed to take over a lot of the blood pressure problems that we've been putting in money separately for. They're agreeing that they'll bring those patients in and do that work, and actually gives them more of a health care home than what they have just being treated for hypertension somewhere else. If you'll look at 1764, you'll notice that's where we're backfilling the hole on the 0.74 rate reduction. You'll also see that in 17.76 and 17.82. Another issue many of you come to us about dealt with 1765 on changing the codes on the CPT codes. And what we've done is replaced half of that cut. We're working with our friends in the Senate to do the same. So hopefully we can bring that into a 0 cut. That also applies at 1777 and 1783. In 1767, there's another grouper payment methodology, but the way we've done it and the way that Chairman Parrish's committee has done it, it doesn't reduce the Medicaid reimbursements to the hospitals. You'll see that also in 1779 and 1785 as well. Moving on down through a couple of other things, 17614, you'll see a change there. That's basically, though, from a revised new number and just a little bit of a reduction. 17615 is a truing up of numbers. You'll also see that on 17715 and 17811. 17616 and 17618 are tied together. Last year we put money in for the single vial or single dose vial money where doctors would be able to give some of the cancer drugs in office. We've gone back and reworked that and come back this year with 17618. Margie deserves a lot of credit because she spent a lot of hours over the summer trying to get an actual number. Before it had just been a projection or a best guess, and finally we've settled on a number of $1.9 million there. There are about 147 drugs that are covered under that, and that way people can actually get the treatment in the doctor's office instead of having to check in as inpatient into the hospitals. The savings for this will be through the back door. You don't get to see it here on paper necessarily, but it does reduce hospital admissions in the end. 17.617, we're providing for 28 additional independent care waiver program slots. There are about 109 on the waiting list. We're going to reduce that by 28. You'll also see 17.619 dealing with the FQHCs and their prospective payment system. The base rates are set on those systems when they come into the system. So if one of the FQHCs has been in business for 10 years, they're still receiving a base rate that they were assigned 10 years ago. However, that rate has been increased over the years as new ones have signed on, but it's never been adjusted down for those that were still at their starting rate. What we're doing is bringing that floor up and equalizing everybody there. You'll see that also replicated in 17.718 and 17.82. One other thing that you've probably seen or heard a little bit about deals with the Source Quality Incentive Program, 17.621. And what that's going to do is putting in a program for rewarding high-performing source programs based on client satisfaction. 17.622 is the language allowing the flexibility to go from 2% to 10%. And then 17.623 again deals with source and just saying that the Medicaid beneficiaries can choose from the source care management companies and the community care services program that are available in each county. If you look at under Medicaid low income 17.72, you'll see where that has been put back in place. And I'll refer you back to where I said a few minutes ago we were not rolling both of these programs into plain Medicare or Medicaid. And that's where that's shown. On 17.74, we're recognizing the savings that's realized from getting babies from the 39th week into the 40th week, and so we're going to see a reduction in cost there. Then moving on to 17.76 goes back into the rate reinstatement there. Some of the codes again, several other things that have happened that are basically rolled up into the things we've been talking about earlier. Moving on down to 17.713. Again, that's a revised number as we've gotten into the year and seeing more what usage is. We're going with a more accurate number there. 17.715 deals with truing up of the hospital cost settlements from fiscal year 12. 17.716, again, another savings from the 39 to 40 weeks. Moving on to the 17.717, reconciles the overage paid through the hospital payment agreement, and the system will be corrected going forward. There was a little glitch in the system, and that's been taken care of now. 17.718 deals with RHCs and FQHCs, and this again addresses that disparity that we discussed just a second ago. And then the planning for healthy babies on 17.720 just extends or allows for that program to be extended into the future. Going on into Peach Care, again, you'll see the rate restorations, things dealing with the CPT codes and the groupers, and those are the changes made there. Again, 17.811 deals with hospital cost settlements, again, a truing up item, and then a small ad for RHCs and FQHCs, again, dealing with the base payments there. 17.92 deals with what I mentioned in the opening comments, talking about DOE employees or teachers in local school systems, dealing with the SHBP increases. We've tried to front load that so that it doesn't catch them off guard, because most of the time when those changes occur, they occur after the school year has already started and their budgets are already nailed down. So we're just trying to keep that from happening and catching school systems off guard. Moving down to 17.11.1, dealing with graduate medical education. We're moving that. We're not cutting that program. We're actually moving 17.11.1 over to Regents to match up with what they're doing there. 17.11.2 is restoring that 3% cut to GME. 17.11.3 is funding the second year of the new residency program at Houston Medical Center for a total of 15 students. And then 1711-4 deals with the osteopathic medicine residency programs at Wellstar and East Georgia Medical Center, and putting in the, increasing the base funds there. 1712-1 restores the 3% cut to Mercer. 1713, in it, there are a couple things there that are going on that tie into 1715. We've been able to do something there that for whatever reason had eluded us over the last several years, and what we've done is basically backfilled the 3% cut, transferred some money up from undergraduate medical education that can then receive a federal match. And by doing so, this will allow Morehouse to actually pull down $1.1 million additional dollars that they're not receiving now from the federal match. So we got their 3% back, plus helped them out additionally to the point that they actually have an increase, which I'm sure that they can use. 1714-1, thank you. $1714-1 deals with the Georgia Alliance of Community Hospitals and Georgia Rural Health Association, talking about the hospital fair. This is where rural hospitals come together and try to court students to come practice in their hospital, and we just feel like with the need we have in rural Georgia for doctors, that is a good investment of our dollars, our Georgia taxpayer dollars, to do that. 1715-2 is that transfer out of undergraduate medical education up to the Morehouse line to allow them to pull down additional federal dollars. Moving on to Department of Corrections on Section 18. Under 1861, through a very successful program that the Department of Corrections has had with Georgia Regents University at Augusta now for several years, they're realizing some fairly large savings in the health care for inmates. And so what we're doing there is recognizing $1.5 million of that savings. If you look at 1881 and 1811-1, basically that's swapping the funds between those two categories of those two programs. I think it's consistent with something we did in the amended 13 budget as well. Section 19, Department of Defense, 1923, the military interstate compact billing. We'd adjusted that number in the amended 13 budget for the actual bill, and so we're just reflecting or annualizing that there. Section 20, driver services, there are no changes. Section 21, DECAL, Department of Early Care and Learning. No changes there, just agreeing with the governor on going from 170 to 180 days in the pre-K program. I want to applaud him for that. And you know, while the changes made to Hope and to pre-K a couple of years ago were painful, I know for a lot of people those changes were necessary, and I think you're seeing now that by doing some of those things, it's allowed us to true things up and get things back in, get those funding streams back in the manner in which they need to be. Section 22, looking under economic development, 2251, dealing with the Georgia Center for Oncology Research and Education, or CORE, and the Regional Cancer Coalitions, and we'll talk about this a little more in DPH in a minute. That money is simply being transferred over to the Department of Public Health, where it better aligns there. 2274 deals with the Historic Chattahoochee Commission, and what that does, there's a compact between Georgia and Alabama for those cities that are along the Chattahoochee River for some of their tourism stuff, and so what we're doing is actually meeting up with what the compact actually requires us to pay. DOE, Section 23, and it's kind of like community health. I should get Chairman Dixon to come up and talk about it, since he was the one that wanted to go through and make so many changes, but that's all right. Everything's good. Looking at 23.0.4, if you'll notice there is a slight change, and the reason for that, the governor in his proposal had included school nurses and TRS, and they're not included into that, so we've clarified that and corrected that. 23.11 ag education, we've taken that 3% cut down to a 1.5% cut. 2336 and 2337 restored both of those cuts, one for adaptive sports and the other one for the superintendent's leadership program. 2341 under charter schools eliminated the funds there for the charter school planning grants. DOE now has someone at DOE that takes care of those things, so it's no longer necessary to continue that program at this time. Communities and schools on 2351, we fully restored that. That touches 42 different communities across this state. And when you look at what the communities and schools are doing within the school systems, you'll realize that they're taking a lot of the kids that would never graduate from high school and getting them through on time, and a lot of times for less money than what it's taking to get them through the regular classroom. 2364, you'll see a move there for the SIRS or Sears Discovery subscription with the Board of Regents. We're moving it because it is part of Galileo and it's being transferred to the Board of Regents. Under the Georgia Virtual School 2392, we're just asking them to delay the course development that they'd planned for 2014, to delay that 1 year into 2015. Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers 2310-1. We're reducing those funds to $50,000, but also moving that over to Regents because that program is based at Kennesaw State University and has been a success almost from day one with that movement to there. And so we're putting it there, and hopefully they're going to be able to continue on for many years. What they do is very important to STEM education in the state. Governor's Honors Program, we're restoring the reduction that had been put in there. Moving on to non-QBE grants. Many of you had talked about sparsity grants and come to us with concerns about what it would do to our smallest systems across the state if those funds were rolled into QBE. We realize that, and Chairman Dixon and his committee have worked hard to keep that separated back out, and those systems will continue to receive that sparsity money for another year. But we're also directing DOE to take and look at the program, the way it's implemented. It's supposed to be reviewed yearly, and to our knowledge, since it's been put in place, it has not been reviewed, so we're asking them to actually do that review. And we're not changing on 2313-2, we're not changing the name of non-QBE formula grants to residential treatment facilities, since we're keeping both items in there for now. 2313-4 deals with some of our RTCs that deal with some special children. I mentioned that earlier in the opening comments as well. This deals with some of the SB 618 grants and some truing up of some numbers that were wrongly reported. It was not by any fault of the folks doing the work, Devereaux. It was a system level calculation error, so we wanted to fix that since it is a contracted service with the state. Under 2314-2, we softened the cut there to school nutrition, went from a 5.8% reduction to a 3% reduction. While we would have liked to have put every dime of that back, we were unable to. Hopefully by the time it gets through the Senate, we'll get into conference, we'll be able to do that. Under 2316-1, a change there, but it's actually a true up for what the equalization is, or the needs are on equalization, and that is fully funding equalization this time. 2317-1, change there on the local 5 mil share, again just a true up of those numbers. Under QBE, you'll see a few adds based on different things down through there. Some of those are just making some true ups, which is true on 2318-1. A true up again on 2318-2. Another true up in fully funding of the special needs scholarships. While it looks kind of odd, there were some health insurance monies that were figured into that were not supposed to be figured into it initially, so that's the reason for the drop there. That's also what you'll see when you look at 2318-4. That is fully funding those math and science teachers that have gone into the profession in their first 5 years. It's just basically a true up when it deals with per member per month payments on SHBP. 2318.5 deals with where the governor proposed to put the ETCs, the technology centers that we've got in Reese's right now, where he had advocated for putting it into QBE. We're saying leave that in the Reese's for now. You'll see in 2318.6 where we didn't agree to put the sparsity grants into QBE. And then when you get on down to 2318.7, that deals with charter system grants and putting the money in for those. And then reflecting of the language on 2318.8 dealing with SHBP. Soften the cut to Reese's on 2319.1 to a 1% cut. 2319.2, you'll see where we left the money in the ed tech centers there with Reese's. Dropping on down to 2324.1, dealing with the state schools. Those are schools for the deaf and blind. And we've added the training and experience step there. Then moving to 2325.1 and 25.2, basically cutting that to 1.5% cut, but just telling them to reduce funds instead of specifying exactly where it's at. Same is true with Ag Ed. We've just said reduce funds and let them deal with it programmatically instead of telling them where to exactly take the cut. Section 24, ERS, no changes. Section 25, a couple of small changes there. And forest protection under 25.3.1. We restored half the cut there. It maintains 2/3 of the supplemental fire protection program. Last year alone, they logged over 23,000 hours. On 23.3.2, reduction in operating expenses for the fire scouting. What we've done is restored funding for 1,000 hours of the air patrol, and that assists over 760 airports statewide the way it is. Moving on to section 26. Governor's Emergency Fund, 2611. You'll see there that actually that interest rate, or the amount we're having to pay for that interest, has been reduced, and so we're taking that savings there to an actual number. On the updated projections, that fund, as you know, was borrowed against, trust fund had borrowed against it from the federal government. We're paying that back at a pretty good clip, and so the interest that we're having to pay is being reduced substantially too. Governor's Office of Children and Families, I want to thank Chair Lady Dempsey for her and her committee's work dealing with GOSIF. And you know, a lot of times when an agency gets started and they're working through things, it takes a little bit to kind of get your feet under you and get everything rolling. And Chair Lady Dempsey and folks that have been talking to her about different things understand that, and so we're working with the governor's office to try to get everything up and running there the way it needs to be. But you'll see on 26.5.2 where $5 million was going to be added there for the Juvenile Incentive Funding Grant Program. We're actually moving that over to CJCC, and the implementation of it is going to pretty much mirror what had been done with the accountability courts. So we felt like that was probably a better fit for those dollars at this time. You'll also see some changes when you get down to 26.5.5. That fiscal year 13 was the final year for those particular grants, so that money is able to come out. And then 26.5.6, 5.7, 5.8 just deals with some things we're asking GOSIF to look at, and just some language we're putting in the document there to let them know that we want to try to help them and work through some things there. And then also 26.5.9, moving some money there from DHS to help with administration of some programs, and making sure that money goes directly to the individual shelters. Still under the governor's office on 26.8.1, we're just making a slight language change there at the request of the Professional Standards Commission. We're just trying to say they want to make the professional development relate directly to student achievement. All we're doing there is putting in some language to help make that be known as a priority for the House and the General Assembly as a whole. Moving on to Section 27, DHS. 27.9.5, the change there is the money I'd mentioned going over to GOSIF a while ago. 2796 was a one-time expense. It doesn't need to be annualized, so we're pulling it back out. 2710-1 and 2711-1. I'm sure many of you have heard from folks talking about elder abuse and some of the people being pulled off of those. We've restored both of those cuts, so those services should not be interrupted. 2717-3 deals again with the room, board, and watchful oversight at the RTCs. We have restored the 3% rate cut there. They've not seen any increases in 10 years, and the reimbursements were less than 75% of their actual cost. And this deals with a little over 2,000 children that are not able to be in traditional foster homes. 200 foster homes have already closed just because of difficulties that they've had dealing with this problem. If you look at 2722-2 under Family Connection, what is happening there is those funds will be replaced. There'll be federal funds coming through DECAL, and they should be held harmless and remain whole there. Section 28, Office of the Insurance Commissioner, no changes. Section 29, GBI. Section 29, line 2911 deals with contractual services for security there at the headquarters. The plan there was if that was eliminated, they would pull agents in to do those security stints. Actually, it would become basically an offset because you're pulling an agent out of active duty to do that, and so we just felt like it was smarter just to have the contract instead of doing that. 2922 deals with an increase in fingerprint fees, so we're having to put less state funds in. The people actually getting the fingerprints done are paying about $7 a piece more for those things, and we're recognizing that there. 2931 deals with the law enforcement pay parity issue, and so there's where it's noted in one particular place. 2932 was the elimination of some one-time funds for some equipment. 2933 is where we're replacing some federal funds with state funds, and that takes care of about 3.5 positions there. Moving on down to 2944, dealing with non-statutory travel. We're asking them to reduce that or curb it a little bit, but we've restored some of that to get to their actual needs. 2945, again, it's a personal services reduction, and we're just saying reduce that amount and use it to match your projected actual expenditures. 2946, again, that's the pay parity issue. Then at 2947 and 2948, replacing federal funds with state funds, that puts back about half of the agents that have been brought in on federal funding. It's about 12 positions dealt with there. Then under CJCC, we reduced the amount for the accountability court program support. We're saying to put 2 positions there instead of what were projected. And then you'll see 2953 is the $5 million moved over from the Governor's Office of Children and Families. Section 30, Juvenile Justice. 30.1.2, all we're saying there is to expand all of those that are non-secure detention individuals and put them all on active GPS monitoring, and so that gains us an additional savings about $700,000 there. Department of Labor, no changes. Department of Law, no changes. DNR, Section 33. 3335, eliminating the one-time funds. We're saying not to, and we're actually leaving $50,000 into there. Those folks are the ones that work with the regional water councils on water use planning across the state, and we feel like it's necessary that they remain intact for this time being. Going on down now to 3361, they were asked Parks and Recreation to make a cut there. We restored part of that cut for maintenance, repairs, and renovations. Also then on 3362, we're saying to retain those funds for field positions because they were actually going to eliminate some field positions there. And then 3364 is the second stage again of the pay parity issue dealing with law enforcement rangers and park managers. And then if you look at 3394, again, the same thing dealing with pay parity there. Section 34, pardons and paroles, no changes. Section 35, State Properties Commission, no changes. 36, public defenders, looking at a couple of changes there, a couple of additions. On 3621 is annualizing the funds for the creation of the 2 new judgeships last year that were created in fiscal year 13. And then 3622 deals with the new judgeship starting January 1 in the Chattahoochee Circuit. And that's what that takes care of. Now, Department of Public Health, Section 37. Y'all, we've been at it for a while, but I just want to let you know we're on the downhill side. Okay, 3712, you'll see that dealing with CORE. And what that does is transfers the funding for CORE to the Department of Public Health. And then as you go down to 3715, that is the money that is sent out to the regional cancer coalitions. There were 6 during this past year. 1 of those closed, so there are now 5 left in the state. And we're actually respreading that money to those 5 to pick up the slack where that one actually went away. 3721, a while ago I was talking about the FQHCs and the hypertension work. This is where I'm talking about that happening. The FQHCs and RHCs will actually be picking up this work and providing better health care to those individuals other than it just being related to hypertension. It'll be total health management, which typically if you get everything else under control, then the hypertension will take care of itself. Under 3751, a small reduction to the TB funding there. You still have a sizable base to allow them to continue their work. 3752 deals with the poison control hotline. That hotline is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They are experiencing some increased call volume, so we're just trying to help them out a little bit on that line. 3773. We've softened that reduction dealing with hemophilia. As you know, we've been very successful in moving some clients over to PSIP. However, the PSIP funds are running out. The feds capped that program as of March the 2nd. So we're going to see probably an uptick there of clients coming in. So we're just providing a little smaller cut there. Of course, if you remember in the amended budget, we went back and lessened the cut there as well. 3711.2 deals with the 3rd year of the 7-year phase-in on grant and aid formulas for the public health centers and counties. Representative Sheldon was instrumental in putting that together a few years ago, and this is just continuing that work. And then under 3714.2, the Georgia Trauma Care Commission, we are taking a little bit of an increased cut there. However, we are asking them to sit down. It's just not a very coordinated effort at this point in time dealing with trauma systems statewide. So we're asking all of those folks to come to the table and let's try to get something worked out that better provides for everybody and not just a select few. Section 38, section dealing with public safety. 3851, we did not grant that increase for projected expenditures, just asking them to keep a handle on that this year. 3861, there had been a proposed move of the motor carrier compliance dealing with the Department of Revenue, moving things over to public safety and vice versa. They're not ready to make the move. Department of Revenue is not ready to make that move at this point in time, but we are asking them to be ready to do that as of July 1 of 2014. So this will be an issue we come back to next year. 3891, dealing with firefighter standards and training council, putting in money for a full-time IT person. Basically, it's a contract position, but it does fund it for the full year. 3811.3, a restoration there. There were no other funds to use, so we've had to replace that back then with state money. 3811.5, just taking a 3% reduction there that had been offered but not taken. 3812.4 and 3812.5 are tied together. The North Central Georgia Law Enforcement Training Academy located in Cobb County is proposed to be closed. Should it close, though, however, it puts additional workload on the Dalton Public Safety Training Center facility up there, so we've taken that $200,000 cut, moved it to the Dalton facility. Section 39, PSC. You'll see 39.31. We've asked for them to reduce funds for the personal services and eliminate 2 field positions. That will leave 1 person there and some support staff for what they need to do. And then 39.32 is just a change in the purpose statement. We're saying, okay, that's fine with us. And that all it does is reflect the movement of the transportation function from PSC to public safety that occurred last year. Section 40, Board of Regents. Looking at 40.1.1, what we've done there, 40.3.1, 40.5.2, and 40.6.2, we're softening those cuts to experiment stations and extension service by 2.25%. We just lowered that cut. They've taken some pretty substantial cuts over the last several years, and we're putting in specialists and then turning right around and cutting funds, and it just seems kind of counterproductive, so we're trying to soften some of that. 40.1.2 deals with the Chancellor's Economic Development Initiative and some of the areas of growth within the agricultural sector and some of the things we're needing to do there. Last year we put in money for a peach blueberry specialist, and Representative Dickey brought it to my attention. They were not able to find a person that could do both, that would actually do what we needed them to do. So the blueberry folks have taken half the money, been able to find a specialist to use part-time there. The peach folks, however, still need a full-time specialist, and we're going back in and doing that. Food pick down at Griffin, if you remember, we put money in the bond package last year to build that. That's the food product and innovation and commercialization center there, that, you know, how to package our products here in the state of Georgia for sale. They've got that coming online, need a person there to take and handle that. We're putting in a half-year funding for that. Then the dairy heat stress scientist position down at Tifton. And then another issue that had been brought to me by cattlemen across the state, and many of you in the House, Ted G. Dyer, a fellow that several of us in this house knew, that ran the bull test station up at Calhoun, passed away unexpectedly last year. Ted was a great guy and did a lot of hard work up there. The Calhoun bull test station is one of those that it's kind of a shining star in the southeast as far as the work they do there. We felt that it was important and imperative for the cattle industry, which is very large here in the state, to continue on with that research done there. So we're saying we need to hire a replacement for that individual. No, they don't have to take a test figuring out 1 + 1 = 2 and that sort of stuff. So it's not that. Anyway, we won't go any further. We'll just leave that one alone. But anyway, Carl, you would be a, never mind, you'd be a subject for a test. Not anyway. All of you that have been drilled by, Chairman, the chairman would understand that, you know, every once in a while we have to take a dig back at him. So all in good fun. 40.4.2. The agency had actually submitted a 3% cut. We've just taken that 3% cut. Then under 40.7, I know that many of you, including myself, have heard from folks that use archives over the over that whole ordeal over the last 6 months or so, I would guess. And that's showing the transfer of the archives over into Regents, where it's actually a very good fit, because they're going to be able to do some partnerships with Clayton State University and some of the other Regents universities and institutions. We're also adding a little bit of funding there to increase the operating hours as well. Moving on down to 40.15.3. Again, deals with the money transferring over from DOE to Regents, dealing with SERS and Galileo. Moving on down then to George Gwinnett on 40.18.6. We are reflecting an 8.25 cut, but we're also reflecting a transfer of $6.7 million, into the regular funding formula. they did not gain a 2012 enrollment growth there because they gained an actual full class in 2012. That had never been recognized because we didn't fund enrollment growth in 2012. So what we're doing is recognizing that here. Moving on to 40.18.9, just showing a contract that's for the Carl Vinson Institute for some services there. 40.1810 is the transfer from DOE of GYSTC, and 40.18.11 was the one-time funds needed for an eminent scholar. They're not needed to be annualized there. 40.20.1 on the Vet Med Teaching Hospital. Heard from several of you there that have vet students that are going there. What we've done is soften that cut considerably, and what they're doing there at UGA at the vet school is actually taking kids that are coming from Fort Valley State, Athens Technical College, and Gwinnett Technical College that are wanting to be vet techs. They're able to participate there at no charge, and according to the dean, some of the mistakes they make more than makes up for not charging them. So anyway, we didn't go along with the cut. We did do a small cut, however, though. 40.22.1 deals with the Discovery Ed contract coming from DOE and some other related services. One interesting fact, 80,000 teachers last year downloaded content from GPB. That was over 5.5 million hits, and that included stuff like This Day in Georgia History, the Georgia History textbook, stuff in high school like physics, curriculum, all of that sort of stuff. So we're getting a tremendous bang for our buck with the stuff and the money that we're spending with GPTV. Section 41, dealing with the Georgia Department of Revenue. Small reduction on forest land protection grants at 4131. We're basically just doing actuals there based on this year. And of course, that may be something we have to come back and adjust again in the amended budget. 4141 deals with the fraud detection and prevention system contract. We're providing for funding for 3 months during FY14. That $625,000 is able to point out several $1 million in fraudulent refunds and capture those before they go out the door. Tax compliance under 4111.2, just basing things on actual expenditures there. These are some vacancies. There were about 50 that the governor had recommended. There are actually 70 plus there, so we're just capturing those savings at this point in time. Moving on to Secretary of State, Section 42, Office Administration. Chairman Reinders and his group have done a great job working with the Secretary of State and some of the things that they're doing there. And what you'll see happening is on 4242, about $70,000 is being transferred from Office Administration into the call center, our Professional Licensing Board program. The Secretary of State has mentioned that call times or hold times are very long. We're trying to help him move some funds around there to take care of that. And you'll see some of that savings that's been grabbed there on 4252. Another small add there is $35,628 from the securities program that moves up to there as well. Moving on down to 42.9, dealing with the Old Ethics Commissioner, the Transparency program. They'd had a contract that was one-time contract, but then we've also provided ongoing funds for maintenance of that contract and the IT services related to it. Section 43, 43.2.2 under Soil and Water Conservation Commission. We have preserved those funds, put those funds back in, $37,000 cut that was offered by the governor to maintain the ag water specialist monitoring the mobile irrigation systems is what that takes care of. Under student finance, Section 44. $44.1.1, we're basing that change on the FY13 actuals. That's the piece that comes into dual enrollment and paying for dual enrollment there. The 44.2.1 dealing with engineering scholarships, that increases the funds provided for those students that are eligible. On down to 4414-1, dealing with the tuition equalization grants. We've made a slight cut there in that award bonus or that award amount. And we're trying to take in balance there. Chairman Earhart's done a lot of homework on this, and I appreciate it because I know that it's something that he feels strongly about, especially when you see where we've put the money over in technical education over here in just a minute. But by the time you take into account the HOPE grants being increased that are used for the private colleges, it winds up only being a cut of about $92 or $46 per semester, or an average of about a 1.1% cut to their tuition as a whole. So you probably hear a little bit about that, but when you drill down on it, it makes a lot of sense to do what's been done. That is actually a 1970s era program that we're trying to adjust for the modern day. Section 45, teacher retirement, no changes there. Section 46, TCSG, and you'll see where we move that $6 million into the teaching program on 4641. Realizing the growth curve for TCSG has kind of caught up to them. While they've had diminished enrollment over the last year, they never were completely caught up on the funding formula, so it's almost like a double whammy cut. Then keep in mind with the HOPE grant changes going from a 3.0 grade point average to a 2.0 grade point average, you're also going to see additional students coming there. So we've tried to soften that cut as much as we could afford to by adding that $6 million there. DOT on section 47. Chair Lady Houston loves airports. She really loves airports. 4712, we've just restored the $120,000 there that was taken. That actually will pull down about $2 million in federal money. We do a 5% state match, 5% local match, and a 90% federal match. 4742, we moved some of the motor fuels monies that were setting unavailable actually into construction admin. That takes care of planning for projects and getting projects on the ground. 478.2 affects every county, every city in the state. We've put an additional $15 million there in from the motor fuels money as well. And then if you'll look at 4716.3, State Transportation Infrastructure Bank under CERTA, it's just putting money in the CID program. For every dollar that we put in there, the CID's matched with $9, so it's a huge return on investment for that $3.6 million. Moving on to section 48, Veteran Services. Two changes there is just reflecting bringing in federal revenue from the aid and attendance policy that we changed that we made last year. Representative Mary Margaret Oliver was instrumental in making that happen. And actually what that's going to do is allow us to increase patient services and the census at these two nursing homes. And you'll see that reflected on 4832 and 4842 as well. No changes to workers' comp on section 49. Section 50, dealing with bonds, it's there for you to look at. Just a couple of highlights real quickly. We did make a few changes and bolstered up some of the stuff on dealing with DOE and some of the construction bonds there. Also dealing with vocational equipment, state schools, and the FFA, FCCLA camps at Covington and Fort Valley. And then you'll see some of the ads in Board of Regents. The governor asked us to put $21.8 million in additional bonds there that had not been included for projects that are completed needing equipment. And then you'll see our list of ads there under Regents. Libraries, kind of a high point there also. Last year was very successful. Chairman Earhart came to me with a proposal to actually do some major repairs and renovation bonding for the libraries across the state. A lot of these libraries have not seen any kind of capital reinvestment in those in quite a few years. So you had air conditioning systems playing out, roofs that were leaking, carpet that was worn slap out, a lot of other things. We were very successful with that last year. We're doing that again this year, as well as providing $2 million for computer replacement, because libraries are becoming kind of a central gathering place in a lot of communities for people to have internet access. Other than that, there are a few other changes throughout the document. 50.2.1.80 is a watershed project. Do want to bring that to your attention. We put in partial funding there. We're looking for our friends in the Senate to help us with that. It actually is a Category 1 dam that has 16 homes in the floodplain below it. So we need to do some work there because it is a state/federal structure. So we're asking for a little bit of help in maintaining that structure and getting it back into proper and correct condition. Mr. Chairman, I'd just as soon have a motion to approve, but I'm sure that probably a few folks have some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take a deep breath. You spoke for 1 hour and 4.5 minutes without a deep breath. We'll give you a chance to get a drink of water. Questions for the chairman. First question is from Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I thank you for the work that you put into this, just so we all make sure that we understand everything right. When you were on under 23, and you're talking about the equalization money and all that, we're not really cutting, we're just truing up the numbers.
Correct. Correct. No cut, just truing it up to an actual number. But this is going to be one of the first times in probably 5 or 6 years that equalization has been fully funded.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Jones passes. Representative Peak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman England,
Yes,
thank you
sir.
for all the hard work.
Yes, sir.
Page 15, the Georgia Aviation Authority, could you just bring us up to speed? I thought we were kind of phasing that thing out. Are we almost there?
The only thing left with the Aviation Authority to do is actually, we sold the state airplanes, King Airs. What they do now is basically a leasing agency or an agency that we go through to make reservations when state planes are needed. It's basically a funnel through.
Okay, so it's just administrative costs.
Right.
To do that, and that will stay in place even after we've sold all the assets?
Yes, sir.
Representative Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman England, thank you so much for the work that you did on this and have for the last several years on our budgets. I did have one question on the repair and renovations and equipment for the libraries. 3.895. I know there was a request for renovations and repair and a request for computers. Are both of these rolled into this 3.895?
Yes, sir. $2 million is computers. The rest is major repairs and renovations.
Okay, so it is specified that $2 million of it's for computers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I want to take a quick second, too, to thank our staff, Martha and Christine, and all the other folks, Tracy and Sarah and Margie and Buck and Brian and Jeremy and I don't know, and Alicia that kind of keeps the wheels on across the street in the office over there. Y'all, they have done a tremendous job this year, especially getting through the 13 and the challenges we had there, and then going straight into the 14 as quickly as we did after we did conference committee. The hours that they've put in, the hours they were here yesterday, and the weeknight hours well into the evening. A lot of times they don't. Yeah, sure they get paid, but they really don't get compensated for what they're worth. They're just a great bunch of folks, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that they've done. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, you don't have any more questions. I'll entertain a motion at this time. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Sir.
We're adjourned.